Zach is back. It's the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
5:16 on Thursday. Welcome back in. Zach Gelb Show right here on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey, coming to you live from the Princeton Orthopedic Associates Studios. We're getting ready, another day closer to Sunday Night Football between the 10-1 Philadelphia Eagles as they make a trip out west to face the Seattle Seahawks. Now joining us is a Pro Football Hall of Fame quarterback and does the Seahawks games on the radio for a very long time, and that's the great Warren Moon, who's kind enough to hop on board with us right now. Warren, Zach Gelb here. Appreciate a few minutes, and how are you?
Hey, Zach, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Doing great. Great time of the year. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving, and we appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, it was really good. I ate too much as usual, and I'm paying for it now. But this is that time of the year you eat and be merry, and the football starts to really rev up this time of the year.
Well, a great surprise in this NFL season has been the Philadelphia Eagles. We knew Carson Wentz was a good quarterback, but he's playing at an MVP level here in year number 2. You got a chance to see him last year when the Eagles did play the Seahawks in Seattle, and it's just a completely different Eagles team. Wentz, 28 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. How about the Carson Wentz you're seeing right now in the National Football League?
Well, there's a huge learning curve between year 1 and year 2, and Carson has really taken that to another level as far as how much more comfortable he is with their offense, how much more in command he is of that offense. And then they did a nice job, Philadelphia did, with putting some pieces around him, whether it's Alshon Jeffries or I think the kid Aguilar has really improved this year. You look at the running backs they have now with Blunt and also Ajayi. He's got some pieces around him that help make his job just a little bit easier. And when you have a young quarterback, he needs that type of support. So he's got that to go along with his great skills and the way he's really taken on the game as far as that command I was talking about. They give him so much more responsibility at the line of scrimmage. He's doing a great job of decision making, and he's really showing a great athleticism for a guy his size.
And the consistency here in year number 2 is just unbelievable. And I think you're right on the depth because last year you didn't have a lot of options. This year they improved that greatly, and you're seeing 7 to 9 guys catch a pass in a game, and you're seeing Carson Wentz, just that real command that you got to see bits and pieces of it last year. But the command of this guy, he looks like he's a 10-year pro right now, and he's only in his second year, so he can only keep on getting better and better.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of Russell Wilson coming into the league as a rookie, and Russell had an outstanding rookie season, but even got better the next year, and they end up going to the Super Bowl. And these two guys, even though they're built totally differently, they have a lot of the same skills. They both take very good care of the football. They both are great decision makers, and they're both very athletic and can make plays with their legs as well as their arms. So a lot of similarities between the two quarterbacks, and a lot of similarities between the teams as far as the way they play defense in Philadelphia, a very, very physical brand of football with their defense, and then they run the ball very well physically with their running game, and they have an exciting, dynamic quarterback. The biggest difference, I think, in the two football teams right now is the Seahawks aren't able to run the football as successfully as Philadelphia has, and when you can run the ball like that and play defense and you have a quarterback that takes care of the football, that's a great ingredient for success.
And then last year when the Eagles were getting ready to play the Seahawks, you looked at the Seahawks as a model that you wanted to build after. They got to 2 Super Bowls, had a dominant defense, a dominant quarterback, and the Eagles are basically, you're right, there's some similarities between these teams. But the one thing, though, you look at the coaching. Now, Pete Carroll, we know he was a coach before the National Football League, had a big background going back to his days at USC, but there was still something that he was looking to prove in the NFL from the previous stop in this league. Doug Peterson didn't have a lot of coaching experience, but was in the NFL for a lot of years as a player. And Doug this year has really done a 180 as well. How just about the coaching job of Doug Peterson? Because going into this year, a lot of Eagles fans and a lot of people here in this area, including myself, were very skeptical of Doug, Warren.
Well, it's a job you have to learn on, and you learn through experience, and he didn't have a whole lot of experience, as you talked about. He was a player, but as far as a coach and going through the experiences of having to make critical decisions at critical times. You don't really know how to handle those situations unless you go through them and you learn from them and you know what to do the next time. And that's kind of what Doug is going through right now. I'm sure he knows how to understand his team a little bit better, understands each and every player a little bit better, their personalities, what buttons to push, what buttons not to. And then he has a really good staff. And if you put together a strong coaching staff, that's going to help you as a young coach too. So he's got all those things working for him to go along with a great ownership that's been very consistent with that Philadelphia team for a long time.
Talking to the Hall of Fame quarterback in Warren Moon. All right, let's get to your quarterback in Seattle. I know we talked about him a little bit. We know he's a special quarterback. But this year, offensive line having big-time problems. Defense has a lot of injuries. Russell Wilson having a special season, Warren.
Yeah, him and Carson right there in the MVP race because of what Russell's been able to do with this team, and he's basically carrying them offensively. I think he accounts for something like 82% of their offense, which is unheard of. He's their leading rusher. Of course, his passing numbers are up over 3,000 yards already. He's doing a great job moving around in the pocket. He's extending plays. He's making special plays with his legs and with his arms. So he's everything that's advertised this year, and I think they're asking him to do a little bit too much, and I'm hoping that our running game will start to come around now that we finally have 5 healthy offensive linemen, which are our 5 best offensive linemen starting. And if these guys can start to create some chemistry with each other going down the stretch here, maybe we can get a little bit more out of our running game and make us just a little bit more balanced so it takes a little bit of the pressure off of Russell.
I don't know if that run game can get developed, though, this week because the Eagles have the best run defense in the league. Talk to me a little bit about that offensive line going up against an Eagles front, which has been a problem for everyone in the league this year.
Well, that's where you have to try and win the football game, is in the trenches on both sides of the ball. And if we can block them up front, maybe we'll have a chance to be decent in the running game. We don't have to run for 150, 175 yards, but if you can run for somewhere around 100, 110 yards against them to go along with our passing game, that's enough to keep a defense off balance. That's enough to make your play-action passes go where you can get those big chunks of yardage down the football field, because it's going to take that against Philadelphia. You're not going to be able to nickel and dime yourself down the field against their defense. They're too good. But if you can get some big chunk plays, some big explosive plays against them, now you've got a chance to change field position and get yourself in a position to score points.
That defense of Seattle, it's a different Seattle defense just because you have been hit with a bunch of injuries, decimated with some injuries, Chancellor, Sherman, and Averill. Just give us a little bit about the state of that defense and what the Eagles can expect coming up on Sunday.
Well, the guys that are in the defense now are going to play it the same way it's been played. You know, Jeremy Lane, who took over for Richard, has been in our system for 5 years now. He's been a starting nickel guy, but he also can play corner. And then we get Shaq Griffin back this week, who's been starting all year long. He's a rookie, but he's been having a really good season. And then we have Byron Maxwell, who you guys know about in Philadelphia, who had great success with Seattle the first time around, which got him in a position to be a high round free agent when he came out. But he's back in this system where he's really, really comfortable and has done a nice job the first 2 games that he's been asked to play. So other than that, I think our defense hasn't changed a whole lot. Our front 7 is still one of the best in the league. We did lose Cliff Averill, who brings a lot off the edge, but we've got some other pass rushers that have done a nice job. Frank Clark does a great job to go along with Michael Bennett and also Sheldon Richardson. So these guys know how to get after the quarterback. This defense has been in place since Pete has been here. They all know how to play it. So the big thing is just not giving up big plays, and that's what Earl Thomas is back there for, to kind of patrol back there to make sure we don't give up those big explosive plays.
Since you're around those players, and we know Seattle, they always have prideful players, and you have a championship culture there, and you've won a Super Bowl, been to Super Bowls in this league. But usually when people go into Seattle, they don't have a lot of success. Recently, over the last few weeks, teams have been able to go in them there and give them a fight and walk out with the victory. And the field nationally is some people like the Eagles this week aren't afraid to go into Seattle. So what has the talk been amongst those players about protecting home field where they've been suffering a few losses over the last few weeks?
Yeah, it's kind of characteristic of them to lose 2 games at home like that, but they were close football games and they did get beat. And it really doesn't matter now for this team whether you're playing at home or on the road. They know every game is important going down the stretch here if they want to make it to the playoffs, and it doesn't matter if they're playing Philadelphia in Philadelphia or in their home park. They've got to win the football game. That's the bottom line. So that's the way they're looking at it, and this is a team that has a lot of big game experience, a lot of playoff experience, and a lot of guys who have been in big games, and they feel like they like their chances against anybody who comes into CenturyLink. It's going to be a tough evening, whether they win or lose.
Wrapping up with Warren Moon, the Pro Football Hall of Fame quarterback, does the games on the radio for the Seattle Seahawks radio network. Let's talk a little bit about Eli Manning. Eli will now be going to the bench, and they'll welcome in Geno Smith up against the Raiders. I thought the Giants handled this thing very poorly for the quarterback that they're going to. What was your reaction when you heard the news about Eli?
You know, it was kind of mixed. When you play in this league long enough, you can ask Joe Montana, you can ask Peyton Manning, you can ask any of the top players that have played in this league. It never really ends the way you want it to end. And I think John Elway probably had the best way of going out. He won a Super Bowl and he retired. But somewhere down the line, if your play starts to diminish, they're going to be looking to replace you, and it doesn't really matter what you've done in the past. And I just don't know what the best way would have been to replace Eli without not looking at what's best for your football team going down the road. What is the best way to do it? At some point, he's not going to be able to play, so they can look at these other guys. When does that time come, and how do you go about doing it? So I don't think there's a great way to replace a legend, and we're seeing it again with Eli Manning, just like we saw it with Peyton Manning, just like we saw it with Joe Montana. Some guys might just have to play somewhere else before their career is over.
Yeah, but here's the issue I have with it. Peyton Manning, when he was told that he was going to be leaving the Colts, Andrew Luck was coming in. When it was Montana, in came Steve Young. They're going to Geno Smith right now, who has proven so far in this league. He's thrown a lot of interceptions, got punched in the face by a teammate, and was late to a team meeting because he couldn't figure out the time zone. So I thought where they went wrong was we know Geno Smith is not a good quarterback in this league and is a backup. Well, why not just go to Davis Webb at this point, which is an unproven player who you did draft last year? That's where I think they caught a lot of heat for this thing.
Yeah, but sometimes as a young player, you're just not ready for the starting job. And maybe Geno wasn't ready maturity-wise when he first came into the league, but he's had a chance to now sit behind Eli. He's learned a lot from him. He's matured a lot himself, and maybe he is ready to play, and that's what they're going to find out. And if he's not, they also want to go and look at Webb, who they drafted in the third round, and give him a chance as well, because regardless who's playing right now, they're not going anywhere as a football team, so they've got to see what they have on this football team at the quarterback position and figure out if they have to go back into the draft and do it. And like I said, there's just not a great way to do it. No matter what people think of what Geno Smith did in the past, they're giving him another opportunity because they've had him in their system for the last couple of years. Maybe they've seen the improvement. Maybe they've seen where he's matured a little bit, and maybe he'll do better. But we won't know until he gets on the field.
For Eli's future, two teams that jump into my mind are the Jaguars because of the relationship with Tom Coughlin, and then also the Denver Broncos, just like what his brother Peyton did towards the end of his career. How about the future for Eli Manning in this league?
Well, we don't know if it's not over in New York. I mean, if these two guys don't do what they're supposed to do as young players and don't show any promise, then Eli could be right back in there. Who knows? But I don't know if that relationship has been severed now because of the way this thing was handled. I don't know where Eli stands on that. But there are other opportunities around this league for Eli if he still wants to play and if he's still motivated. And sometimes you need a change. I know I had a change in my career after 10 years in Houston, and I went on to Minnesota and had some successful seasons. There's other quarterbacks that did the same. Joe Montana went to Kansas City and had some success. Peyton Manning goes on to Denver and wins a Super Bowl. So great quarterbacks can go somewhere else and still have success later in their careers because they get a new motivation and a new drive.
I don't know how closely you're paying attention to it just because we're in the midst of a crazy season and the Seattle Seahawks are fighting for a playoff spot, but maybe the Giants also turned to the draft with having an abysmal season this year. Is there any young quarterback right now in college that really catches your eye, the great Warren Moon?
Well, I mean, you got to look at the kid at USC. I think everybody looks at him. You look at Rosen. at UCLA. Both of those kids can really throw the football and make plays with their arm, and the kid at USC definitely with his legs and his arm. This is supposed to be a very strong quarterback year, so I'll have to look at it a little bit closer once we get into the scouting part of it and see which guy is going to be rated the highest and which guys have done the best in their college careers. But from what I understand, there's 4 or 5 guys that have the chance to be in the first round this year, so the Giants will have some things to look at if the 2 guys they presently have on their roster don't work out.
2 more for Warren Moon, who joins us right now on the hotline. Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. We were talking about MVP candidates earlier. A lot of people are talking about it being either Brady or Wentz. We'll throw Russell Wilson into the conversation as well from the points that you did allude to. How do you think this MVP conversation plays out when the season finally ends?
Well, we still got 5 games to go, and I think these next 5 games are going to tell because, like you said, Wentz and Brady are right there. Russell's right behind them, and we'll just have to see how these teams and these individuals finish down the stretch. The MVP is always something to me that goes down, to the last week. I think Matt Ryan last year was the favorite most of the season, even though he had some competition from Brady at the end and some other guys, but he was the guy that ended up winning it. And this year it's going to go right down to the end too with probably a quarterback again because of the way the game has changed. Quarterbacks are going to be the dominant offensive forces in the game right now because of the rules.
And finally, before we let you run, we all know that a quarterback's best friend is a good offensive line and also a good running back. Dak Prescott loses Ezekiel Elliott because of the suspension. What are you seeing out of Dak right now, and how does he pull this and turn this thing around to get him back to the Dak Prescott that we saw last year and survive this stretch without Ezekiel Elliott?
Well, one thing young quarterbacks have to understand is once teams get a chance to see you a round or two, they kind of know how to defend you and take away what you do best. So what Dak has to do now, and their coaching staff has to kind of redefine some of the things that he's doing and not be so predictable. He's throwing a lot of underneath passes, and that's what people are playing him for. And they're limiting those gains on those underneath passes to maybe just a completion, but not a lot of yards after the catch. He's going to have to drive the football down the field a little bit more and get some more chunk plays out of their offense, some more explosive plays, because what they're lacking from Zeke, who used to give them those explosive plays in the running game, they're not getting those as much. So you've got to try and find them in the passing game now, and that's up to their coaching staff to make sure those things happen.
I've been speaking to you for a long time, going back to when I was in high school and college, and I've seen you at the Radio Row at the Super Bowl for all these years, and you always tell me about Sports One marketing. So in closing, give me a little update on Sports One marketing and what you're up to these days, Warren.
Well, we're involved in a lot of different projects with our company, and it's steadily growing. We've got a project coming up right at the Rose Bowl that's coming up pretty soon, and it's a speakers bureau that we put together, and we bring in speakers and talk about sports and technology and different things like that, and put together a really good panel of people. And it's a fundraiser where we raise money for the Crescent Moon Foundation, which is my foundation. So that's one of the projects that we have coming up right now. And then of course we're gearing up and getting ready for Super Bowl because we have an app that we put together, which is a sports app, and we're going to implement that at the Super Bowl in a lot of different events, and it's something that's a little bit hard to explain over the air, but if people go to our website at sportsonemarketing.com, it'll teach you a lot about what this app can do and how it can benefit your company. So that's a couple of the things that we have going on right now as a company, and really excited about the future.
Well, when we're talking to you at the Super Bowl this year on Radio Row, we'll be talking about the Eagles in the Super Bowl. Is that going to happen this year?
There's a great chance. I mean, they're off to a great start. They've got a really good bead right now on having the number 1 or number 2 seed. They just have to keep winning and keep playing well. And in the NFL, a lot of it has to do with injuries as well. And they've been pretty healthy for most of the season. I know they lost their big left tackle and Peters, but their offensive line has been able to regroup and keep playing well. But you saw what happened to the Seahawks a couple of weeks ago in Arizona. It only takes one game for you to have some devastating injuries that kind of mess up the chemistry of your football team. So as long as they continue to keep going through the season and stay relatively healthy, they've got a chance to be right where they want to be in February.
Well, Warren, it's always great to talk to you. We appreciate it. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in February.
All right, Zach, great talking to you, man. Take care.
Thanks so much. Warren Moon joining us, the legendary Warren Moon right there on the Zach Gelb Show, the Pro Football Hall of Famer.